God is good all the time. Good evening, everyone, and good evening even to those who are joining us on Facebook. It is because of our shared commitment to learning and understanding and compassion that we are here. And on behalf of St. Agnes, I extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you who have come to be part of this important seminar on autism. Autism is not just a topic for discussion. It represents the lives, the challenges, the triumphs of individuals and families within our community and beyond. Our intention today is to create a space where we can listen, share, and uplift one another. And to our guest speaker, Mama Mneli Dunge from Action in Autism, we are profoundly grateful for your presence and willingness to share your experience, your expertise, your insights on autism with us. And your dedication to this cause is inspiring, and we eagerly anticipate the wisdom that you will impart upon us today. Before we delve into our discussions, shall we begin with a word of prayer? Loving God, we come before you today with hearts open to understanding and minds ready to learn. We thank you for the gift of community, for the opportunity to come together in your name. We ask for your wisdom and guidance as we seek to deepen our understanding of autism and its impact on lives. We pray for those individuals who live with autism, for their families, for their caregivers, and for all who support them. Grant them strength, patience, and ability to see the beauty in every moment. May your love and grace surround them, reminding them that they are fearfully and wonderfully made. Bless Mneli, who will share her knowledge with us. May her words inspire empathy, broaden our perspective, and ignite a desire to create a more inclusive and compassionate world. As we engage in this discussion, help us to embrace diversity, to practice patience, and to extend kindness to one another. Let this seminar be a seed of understanding that grows into a tree of compassion within our church and our community. We commit this time to you, and we ask for your presence to be felt among us. May our hearts be touched, our minds be enlightened, and our actions reflective of your teachings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Once again, I welcome you to this seminar on autism. May our time together be filled with insights, with connections, and a shared commitment to making our communities more inclusive and a loving place. Now, with great pleasure and anticipation, I would like to invite our guest speaker, Mama Mneli Dunge, to come forth. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to her as she steps forward to share her wisdom with us.
Thank you, Baba, for the opportunity. And I wish to commend you, Father Ngobo, as well as the congregation, for allowing me this opportunity, because we know very well that autism is not always discussed. There are so many disabilities that are out there. Most of them, they are given slots everywhere, and they are given that attention. But when it comes to autism, for some people, it's still a taboo. It's not even discussed, even within families. You'll find that if you have an autistic child, some people, they will tell you that, I've decided that I'm going to delete my family because they do not accept the child. So they won't understand. They will look at the child and what the child is presenting. They will look at the behavior instead of seeing the child first and then the behavior that the child is presenting with. So thank you so much. I'm going to start with the quote by Emily Balou, which says, "Autism is not a disorder of social skills. It is just a condition of core processing differences that involves movement, language, and sensory aspect. And those things affect the ability to deploy conventional social skills, but it doesn't make social skills impossible to have." Because most of the time because autistic people, they can either be speaking verbally or they can be non-speaking. That's what we say now, according to the neurodevelopmental language. We used to say verbal and non-verbal, but these days we are saying speaking or non-speaking. So most of the autistic people, you find that they are non-speaking. And you will find that even if I were to have my child with me, whoever I am with will not speak directly to the child, but they will speak about the child to me, meaning that it's like the child has been written off. So here Emily Balou is reminding us that social skills, they are taught. So you don't have to see the disability, but you need to look at the person, identify the strength that they have, and capitalize on those strengths. So without any waste of time, let me just define autism. According to the DSM-5, autism is characterized by two domains, which is social communication, social interaction, as well as the restricted and repetitive patterns of behavior or interest. So these are the two things or signs that you can be able to detect that a person does have traits or the person is on the spectrum, because that is what we say. So the person would either be speaking or non-speaking, but you find that they are unable to initiate friendship. So, like for instance, I came with my granddaughter here, but she's been socializing with everyone. But someone who is autistic, they lack social skills, so they cannot initiate a conversation. So that is what we need to teach them, to learn social skills. So as much as they will be verbally, or they will be speaking, but you find that, let's say in a mainstream school, that child will just sit there by the corner all by themselves. When they are put in when the teacher is giving them group work, the child will just keep to himself, will not participate with the entire group. And maybe because the orientation has not been done, the other learners will not even understand why this one is keeping to himself, why this one doesn't want to participate. They might think that maybe because mostly autistic people, they are very clever. They might think that maybe it's because he thinks he's better than us or what, because they do not understand that autistic people, they lack social skills. And also, like I said, you can't, they do not maintain eye contact. So you need to teach them to be able to give you that gaze. They don't. And also, they have difficult in adjusting their behavior. For instance, if a child was busy playing a certain game, they can't switch from one activity to another activity or from one game to another game. So for them to be able to do that, there must be a structure that has been put in place. You have to teach them through visual aids to say, this is what we are doing now. We're waking up in the morning, and you go and have a bath, and then after that we will have breakfast. So it must be in visuals, because autistic people, they learn best when they see something. So you can say it, but it won't make sense to them. But if there is a visual or even a real object, then it makes sense to them. Hence, it is important for parents to understand that you can give an instruction, but then if your instruction is just oral or verbal, it will take time before the child can understand what you are saying. But if you also infuse a visual cue or maybe a real object, then it will make sense. Hence, we are talking about having a visual schedule, because a visual schedule will then make this child to understand what is going to happen, what is coming next, so that they are not overwhelmed, because they do not want change. So if there is going to be a change, they need to be alerted prior. For instance, let's say over the weekend we're going to be visiting. So if I have an autistic child, I need to alert them. We can go to the calendar and count the days and say, how many days are left before we are going to South Coast? Oh, 4 days. Then the following day, you go to the calendar again. You're counting the days until the last time so that they are not overwhelmed. And then they won't be having meltdowns, because the challenge when their routine is uprooted, they will then tend to have meltdowns because they do not like change. And the second one, because I was speaking about the social interaction and social communication, the second one, which is the restricted and repetitive patterns of behavior, how would you identify then a child? One, they will, some of them, they used to do this hand flapping. So they will do this, or when they're playing, for instance, with cars, normally kids, they will put the car on the floor and they will be like, zhim. But an autistic child, they won't do that. Instead, they will line the cars instead of playing with the car. They will just line all the toys. Maybe it's the pegs, they will also line them. They will put them according to categories, maybe according to colors or whatever, but that's how, that's one of the signs that you can also see. And maybe they also have that fixation. Instead of playing with the car, they will just be fixated on the wheels, and you will find that they will be spinning the wheels or maybe looking closely at the wheels, instead of playing the car the way that the car is supposed to be played. They also insist on the sameness. Like I said earlier on, you will find that they will play one and the same game over and over. So they can watch the same movie over and over because they do not like to switch from one activity to another activity. And also, you find that there are preoccupations. So if a child loves cartoons, he will just focus on the cartoons, nothing else. That is how they are fixated. So if the child loves dinosaurs or dolls, that would be, so whether the child is going to school, there will be a certain doll in the school bag, or maybe in the car, you will find that there's a doll because they are, fixated in that. Then we need to understand that autistic people, they have sensory sensitivities. You think of all the senses, like for instance, if there is noise, they will be sensitive to noise. So they can either be under or over aroused. So there will be those that will require more input, and there will be those that will avoid. So those we say they are hypersensitive to. So they can be hypersensitive to sound, meaning if there is a lot of sound, you will see them maybe trying to close their ears because they are indicating that this noise, in fact, it's painful to them. But for us, we are familiar with the noise. So there's nothing, we don't even respond, but for them, they are very much sensitive. Hence, it is important for a parent or for the teacher to observe and see which sensory issues is the child experiencing, so that if the child is hypersensitive to sound, then you can buy these earplugs. There are those that are big, and there are also those small plugs for those that are sensitive to touch, because they can also be sensitive to touch. And as we know that kids, they love being embraced, they love hugging, but for some autistic kids, they don't love that. So a touch is a no-no for them. Hence, when they are sensitive to touch as well as sensitive to noise, you have to buy those small plugs instead of these big earplugs. And for those that are hyper, it means when there is an overload in the environment where they are. For instance, let's say you have taken a child to the mall and there's a lot of sound, the sound from the tills, from the people that are talking together, and then you start to see a certain behavior on the child because the child is trying to run away from the environment because there's a lot of stimuli that is coming through. And so that child, what is important for you as a parent is to observe so that you know, so that you can then minimize the triggers, because those are the triggers. And if that child is kept for long in that particular environment, then the child will then have a meltdown. And for us, when they have meltdowns, I know before we even studied this, when you saw a child in the mall that is crying and, you'll be like, this parent doesn't know how to discipline his or her child. Look at the child. Look at what the child is doing. Not understanding that the child is sensitive to noise or sensitive to light, which means that as a parent, you need to have a toolkit that you bring along everywhere you go. So if your child is sensitive to light, you bring sunglasses, so that the child can then be able to minimize the light that is coming through. In short, autism has got 3 levels. So even those that are in mainstream school, those that can go as far as university, those they fall under level 1, but they still require a level of support. Despite the fact that they are clever, they can go as far as university. But you find that they still have a challenge with social interaction. They will be there studying even in the university or library all by themselves without engaging with the other students. And you find that because of the executive function, which is dysfunctional, they lack the organization and planning. They have planning and organization problems. Hence, you will find that there must be a structure that is there so that they can be able to move from one activity to another activity, because they are born with that deficiency, if I may say so. And then we have those that fall under level 2. Those that fall under level 2, they require substantial support. You might find that they have a problem with social interaction. They also have a special interest. They are fixated to some interest. And 3, you find that they have that repetitive behaviors, whereby the child will be doing one and the same thing over and over and over, like I said earlier on. And then the last level, which is level 3, they also require very substantial support. And mostly those, they are non-verbal. For some, they can be verbal, but for some, they will be non-verbal as well. So, but you find that they will be requiring a lot of support. So it is important for you as a parent or for you as a teacher to know your child, the level of your child, whether the child is level 1, level 2, level 3, so that you think and you plan the interventions that you have to put in place for that particular child. Okay, now let us look at the challenges that autistic people experience. One, like I said earlier on, they have a problem with the executive function. The executive function is located in the frontal lobe of the brain, where your cognition, your memory is. So you find that they will lack the planning and the organization skills. And what is also important is that a routine and a structure. So for all autistic people, there must be a routine. And if that routine is interrupted, that's when then they will then, at times, people tend to say they will throw a tantrum. We need to know that there's a difference between a tantrum and a meltdown. So they need a routine or a structure. That is why when you go to autistic units or to autistic schools or classes, you will find that there will be a timetable, but then there will also be a visual timetable, because it makes it best for them to understand that now it's maths, or now we're moving on from maths to this subject. But it makes it best because it's visual. They are able to see, because like I said earlier on, they are stimulated by the sense of seeing. And then the social challenges, I've mentioned already that they lack that social, they cannot initiate friendships, and the restricted interest, which makes them not to be able to mingle with the other learners, because they won't want to switch from one game to another game. Hence, you will find that they will then resort to playing by themselves. eye contact, I did talk about that, and other communication challenges. And also autistic people, we tend to say they've got a behavior. It's not a behavior, but because most of them, they are nonverbal, and they cannot express their emotions and feelings. They can't tell you as a parent that, I don't like this. This light is too much for me. There is a lot of noise on the background. Then they resort to behavior then, because they can't express themselves. Hence, it is important that we come up with some forms of communication. We can use signs, ordinary signs. We're using Makaton, we're using South African Sign Language, just, a few signs just to elicit whatever that we are talking about. For instance, if you are teaching your child toilet training and you want to take your child to the toilet, you are saying, let's go to the toilet. You show them the picture of the toilet and you are saying, let's go to the toilet. So the signs, they make it much easier for the child to grasp whatever that we are saying. We also use the AAC, which is an augmentative and alternative communication, which is pictures and words. So it makes it easy for the child because the picture is there, but also they learn words as well. And also another challenge, it is the meltdown. Like I said earlier on, they can throw tantrums, but at times a tantrum can then escalate if it is not de-escalated, if it is not diffused, it then escalates to a meltdown. What is a tantrum? What is a meltdown? We are going to be talking about that. A tantrum is always goal-oriented. The child wants something. The minute you give them that, they stop. So that's a tantrum. But with the meltdown, even if you give them their best toy, they still continue. The reason being, with the tantrum, the child is in control. But with the meltdown, the child is no longer in control. And there's nothing that the child can do, nor you as a parent or teacher can do. The only thing that you can do will be to ensure that the child is safe. Maybe a little bit of confirming to the child that everything is going to be okay. But at times, you need not talk, but just to observe that the child is safe. And then what we do not understand is that autistic people, especially after having a meltdown, they develop anxiety and depression. They tend to blame themselves. Why did I do that? Why did I hurt my mom? Because at times, some of them will be, I don't want to use the word destructive, whereby you find that they become physically, so they become aggressive. And at a later stage, when they are back to their senses, that's when then they start to blame themselves. But what we need to understand is that during the phase of a meltdown, they like someone who is epileptic in that subconscious state because there's nothing that they can do. But they tend to blame themselves. Hence, it is important for you as a parent not to talk about that immediately after the meltdown. Let that, lie down, and then after maybe some time, that's when you can talk about that. And also, there are other strategies that work well. For instance, a visual schedule, like I said earlier on, or a social story, whereby you can write a social story. You use social story also even when you want to enforce boundaries in the child. So you can write a social story, but a social story must have visuals also for it to be meaningful or effective. Autistic people, they do the stimming a lot. And at times, you will find parents and teachers saying, "Nay, don't do that." You can't stop them when they do the stimming, because that is when they self-regulate themselves. So the stimming is good for them. So at times, when they can perceive that they are going to be overwhelmed, they start then flipping their hands and do all sort of stimming, like pacing up and down, because they are trying just to regulate themselves, because they can see that, it's like, when there's going to be a storm, it starts with a thunderstorm. So they can feel that, there's a a thunderstorm that is coming. And for them, then they're trying to regulate themselves with doing all this kind of stimming. And the sensory activities I did mention earlier on. Then can we look at the coexisting medical conditions? Because autism, most of the time, it comes with other underlying issues. Like for instance, a child will have autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And one would have autism and they will also have epilepsy. One would have autism and they will have specific learning difficulty. You will only be able to detect that once they get to school. That is when they start to have spelling problems, they reverse or they omit when they're writing. Then that's when then you start to detect that, oh, okay, so this one has got autism, but also the other coexisting condition would be the specific learning difficulty. It also comes with intellectual disability, but the percentage research states that it's only a small percentage of autistic people that also have an intellectual disability. But as society and community, we think that every autistic person has an intellectual impairment, which is very wrong, because they are very clever. You give them a gadget, they will be able to do things that you can't do, but we're calling ourselves normal, you know. But there are so many things that we can't do that autistic people do. So it also coexists with depression, like I said earlier on, that most of the time, autistic people, they will be experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression without the parent knowing. One of the examples would be when maybe an autistic person is on the loop, you know, when they're pacing up and down. And what is important, it is to find out what is it that happened prior to that, what could have triggered that behavior. Because a meltdown doesn't just happen, or a behavior, they don't just exhibit any behavior, but something must have happened prior. At times, it could be something that happened immediately before they start having that meltdown, or it could be a build-up of events. Let's say a child who's going to school, who's driving with his parent, and along the way there were cars that were hooting and all of that. So a lot of noise during that traveling from home to school can trigger a meltdown. So it is important for you as a parent or teacher to just go back, tread the steps, so that you will know exactly where the trigger emanated. Because at times, if a child had a meltdown at school, the parent would think maybe the trigger was at school. At times, the trigger would have been along the way, or maybe it's something that happened at home. Maybe there was an accident, and as a parent, you were supposed to change the route to school. And remember, we said autistic people, they don't like change. So you decided to take another route without notifying. You are supposed to tell the child or the autistic person that we are now turning, we are going to take this direction, there's going to be 3 robots. Immediately when we pass the first robot, this is what you will see, and then we'll go until you get to where you are driving to. When you do that, you are alleviating the anxiety, because they become, so overwhelmed. Because no one notified them that there was going to be a change. So for them, they were expecting to move from A, B, C, and then straight to D. Okay. I did speak about, this is the theory of mind, which says autistic people, unlike us, maybe as I'm talking, if someone can do this, I will know that I'm boring and I must rap. But for an autistic person, he will continue talking and will not understand what this nonverbal mean. Why? It is because the way they were born and the way God created them, they are unable to perceive what the other person's mental state is. So why we always mention that even as a parent, when you frown, an autistic person, it doesn't make sense to them, because they can't read the nonverbal. Hence, it is important to always use visuals or even write down. Hence, we are emphasizing the social story so that it makes sense if you want to say something to them, write it down and have visuals, then it makes sense. So we are talking about the executive function, and there are three things that are affected with the executive function. It is the working memory, the inhibitory control, as well as the cognitive and mental flexibility. These three areas, they are responsible for planning, for organizing, for recalling information, and all of that. I'm not sure how much time do I have. You will have to time me. Otherwise, I'm going to go on and on. Okay, so how will you detect the lack of the executive functioning? One, it is incomplete task at school, even at home, whereby the child will not be able to complete tasks that are given. And then what are you supposed to do then? Because you're supposed to come up with a strategy. You can break whatever task into smaller chunks that the child will be able to finish. Or you can put a timer so that the child will know that, okay, for this activity, then I'm allocated 10 minutes. So by this time, when the alarm rings, then I must have finished. But you can't just, the alarm cannot ring at 8 minutes or 9. At first, maybe at 5 minutes, there must be a signal so that then the child can be able to work along. Otherwise, then the child will then be disturbed. I did say that they are unable to adjust. The overfilling cups, it is when they are overwhelmed by the environment, by the stimuli from the environment. And the inappropriate dressing. For instance, I'm coming here to the church. I couldn't come wearing my jeans and stuff, you know, that's appropriate. So I had to wear a dress. I know, but no, I'm just pulling your legs. Okay. And then we always say that they focus on details, not on the whole picture. And it is said that they lack empathy, but the truth is they do not lack empathy. Even if as a parent or as a teacher you are worried, they can tell that you are worried. It's just that they lack the expression. They cannot express that they sing that you are worried. Hence, then we say they lack empathy, because for them it's like, it's, you know, it's normal. Yet deep down they feel whatever that you are going through. It's just that they won't be able to come to you and offer you a hug and all of that. And, okay. So it is important that when you're having an autistic child or an autistic person, where they are working, there must be order. So avoid overstimulation and also control the control. What do we mean by control the control? As parents, I remember yesterday I had a parent. That parent kept on saying, we were at the car wash with my granddaughter. The parent kept on saying, hey, don't do that. Hey, don't touch. Hey. Then the child will end up confused. Thanks. The child will end up confused what to do and what not to do because of this overly controlling, which is done by parents. Okay, so what is important for us to understand the child and also the triggers, we need to look at the triad of impairments, okay? The first one that we're going to be looking at, it is the iceberg principle. What does the iceberg principle say? What we're seeing is just the tip, but what we should be worried about is what is underlying. I will make an example of not just autistic people. As a teacher, because I've been a teacher, I've been working at the district, when a child is experiencing a behavior, I'm talking about a neurotypical child, when a child is exhibiting a behavior in class or at school, teachers tend to focus on the behavior instead of delving and finding out how is the situation at home, what happened, what is it that could be worrying this child? Because what we are seeing, the behavior that the child is exhibiting is just the tip. It's just a message. But what we should be worried about is what is underneath. So what is important with the iceberg principle is that when you start to see, when you start to see the behavior, you need to check from the environment. What could be in the environment for autistic people? What is it that could be triggering this behavior now? Because everything has been going well, but all of a sudden then we're seeing this change in this autistic person. Then look at the environment so that you can be able to detect, what is it? Is it the sound? Is it the touch? But if you know, once you have observed and you have you have spoken with the parent, you know exactly the sensory issues that your child is experiencing, you will then be able then to reduce the triggers or minimize or do away with them if it is possible. Like, for instance, moving away because there are a lot of lights, taking the child away to a safe space. This is a visual schedule that I was talking about. So most of the kids that are autistic, you find that they are being potty trained, they haven't even achieved the potty training, and this is the best way. This is the visual schedule that shows what is happening. So either you can put that, can you see the sun? It could either be the sun or maybe it's a child in bed, a picture of a child in bed. Even the child himself, take a pic and you go and print that and you put it there. And then each time you go and wake the child out, you have all these visuals next to the bed. So when you wake the child up, you take that visual about waking up, you put it in an envelope, and then you are saying, okay, let's go to the toilet now, pointing at the toilet. And you can also make the sign. So after that, then you are saying, okay, let's have breakfast. If maybe the child will shower before, you put a picture of a person. This is just to make you see how a visual schedule is done. So this makes it easy for the child to understand what is happening, what is going to come next. By so doing, they are not going to be overwhelmed because they know exactly that immediately after the bathroom, they're going to be having breakfast. After breakfast, they're going to be having their medication, and then they're going to be showering and everything. Then there's going to be a car that takes the child to school. So then the child knows exactly what is going to happen. It could be the car as well as the picture of a school. Then the child knows exactly what is going to happen throughout the day. I just gave you just a glimpse of how it's supposed to be done. And another strategy that we can also use, it is the prompting, which is good also for teachers. So the prompting, like we are saying, the prompting can be done. For instance, you can give a child a cue of what is going to happen. That will then make the child know exactly what is it that is going to happen going forward. Let's also not forget that autistic people, they take time to process. So when you are giving an instruction, whether it is visual or not visual, or it's written down, allow for time to process so that they can then digest whatever that you are saying, and then they can then respond to you. So let's say you are in class, you are a teacher. You can't just ask a question and then expect the answer there and there. So allow for time so that the child can process, and then the child be able to give you the answers. Which means that by virtue of being autistic, you have to apply for a concession if you're a teacher, so that the child can have extra time. But you must have observed whether the child cannot complete the task at a given or specified time. Once you have observed that, the department allows for a concession. There's a concession for extra time, there's a concession for oral assessment. There are so many concessions. There's even a concession for computer for those that are experiencing a challenge in writing. So, as we know that autistic people, they are good when it comes to gadgets, it can also be one of the strategies that can be used for them. And it's something that they also love. So it will be able also to minimize the distraction, because they will be working with a gadget, which is something that they love. And they will also, so you'll be like killing two birds with one stone, if I may say so. Okay, what is important, don't ever do the task for the child, because some parents, they tend to do the task instead of letting the child do it. Let the child do it. If maybe the child is, it's level 3 or so, you use hand over hand. So you take the child's hand and you do whatever that the child wants to do. For instance, let's say at home, the child who's non-speaking wants a cereal. So you go to the cupboard. Because the child is going to take your hand to the cupboard, don't just open and take because you know what the child wants, but rather, because you want to instill the language as well, rather open the cupboard and ask the child, do you want cereal or pap? You're showing the pictures. Do you want cereal or bub? So it's a choice. Always give choices. By doing so, you are also instilling language. Okay, so the prompting, then you can use a visual, thereafter it's a verbal, and then it can be a gesture, like I was saying. When you want the child to sit down, you use those signs, sit down. If the child wants more, maybe you want the child to go and take a bath, but the child is still playing, you want the child to stop, then you tell the child that we are finished. Then the child will understand. But you can also ask the child to say, do you want to play more? And then you can maybe allow him like a minute to say, oh, you want more? Okay, then you allow that minute. But then tell the child that I'm going to count. When I count from 5 to 1, then we stop because we will be finished. So the visual cues, they help a lot. And then at times partially physical and full physical. Other strategies, that's the best strategy. The AAC that I was talking about. I'm sorry. So one of the strategies would be the iPad or the tablet. So the iPad or the tablet, that's the best way because the child can be able to write and tell you, thank you so much, can be able to write and tell you what he or she is worried about. I'll just share one of the examples that were, one of the stories. It's one of our former director, our CEO, Lisa. Her son, yes, went to the shops with one of her friends. Along the way, an oncoming car disturbed them, and the lady touched her brakes very hard. And the son was, I think, the anxiety, he moved from fight, flight, and, he froze. And he wanted to open the door and move out whilst the car was in motion. And when the lady was so shocked, she went back and said, but your son, I don't know, I'm still shocked. I can't even imagine what could have happened. And Lisa says she took her iPad and she wrote a message. She took her phone and wrote a message to his son who's using an iPad. He said, what went wrong? And his son said, no, it was the bad driving. So can you see that if you allow them a chance, they will be able to express themselves. But you need to allow them that chance, and we mustn't think for them, but allow them, give them the gadget, because it's a means of communication. They can be able to communicate wherever they are. And still on the gadget, there are softwares that you can find there for free. So this is one of the communication board. This is the AAC. It's a picture that comes with the word. You can download it for free, and you can use it because you may never know when someone will come in, they are autistic, but they will be able to use this in order to communicate. I did speak about the tantrum and the meltdown, and it says these are the 5 warnings that a possible meltdown is coming. So the child will become withdrawn from whatever that the child was doing, and then they become impatient or angry. They start to be aggressive, and you wonder why they are aggressive. It is because they can feel that there is a lot of sensory input from the environment. So what is important, it is to look out for all of these signs. There are more signs, but what is important is to note that when a meltdown is about to happen, there are signs that are there. So for you as a parent, you must always observe so that you know those signs. Okay, so this is the stage of the meltdown now. This is how the child or the autistic person feels when they are having a meltdown. Firstly, there are physical signs. Look at the dilated pupils. The person might start trembling, and also the palpitation, the rapid heart beat and the breathing, and also the skin also. The skin becomes flushed. So those are some of the signs that you can look out for. and you will know exactly. Then that's when you are supposed to take the child and put them in a safe space before the explosion. Because when the meltdown is there, there's nothing that you can do. You just have to sit and ensure the child is safe. Okay, so here the causes. Sensory overload, I did mention. It could be the information that is too much and too fast. Maybe the multitasking. Emotional overload, maybe, task performance demands at school. Maybe the teacher, now that this is the subject that the child is struggling with, then the child is going to start feeling like that because now he's no longer in his comfort zone because this subject is difficult. And then the sudden change, I've spoken a lot about the change and shift, and also just the frustration. So after I did mention this as well, to say after the meltdown, the child will then start to feel guilty, punishing himself because of what had happened, yet the child, he or she had no control, and then the anxiety comes in. And if not controlled, then another meltdown will then erupt, yes. So what is it that you're supposed to do? I did say a safe space, communicate efficiently, use limited speech or no speech at all. And at times, you might just, put your hand on the child. But at times, remember, those that are sensitive, they won't even want you to come close to them, just the touch, no touch at all. So for the classroom support, remember we said the behavior is communication, the way of expressing the emotions and feelings. Visual prompts, a schedule should be there. It could be a visual schedule, which is like your 3D, or it could be what do I say this? It could be a real object that you can use. And find out from the child, what is it that the child like, what is it that the child doesn't like or dislike. The timer prompt, like I said, and also beware of the sensory triggers, like I said earlier on. The lights, so the sunglasses, in order to block the lights, the earplugs, closed doors or high wall. Autistic people, they don't want to be confined. They love nature, they love open spaces. So when they are confined, they tend to be frustrated. So now and again, you need to take the child to the park or out just to get that breath of fresh air. And also, they might be having a challenge with the food. Like, remember, they've got a problem with the texture. Some would love soft food, they would prefer soft. Some would prefer hard or crunchy. So it is important that you know as a parent so that you avoid those that might trigger. And also the clothing. For some kids, those that are sensitive to touch, they won't like to wear tight clothing, like your leggings and your tight t-shirts and vests. They would love baggy clothing. So it is important that you cut all these labels, cut the labels, and also ensure that they would prefer an elastic, but not that tight also. And some are sensitive to smell. Some, they are hypersensitive to smell, so they don't like the smell. Some, they would love the smell. Hence, if you, or maybe you're wearing their favorite scent, they will come and sniff you. And you know that is social inappropriate. So a person might be like, oh, what's happening here? It is because they are stimulated by that scent. Okay, scent or soap. Sensory and stimulating toys that you can buy, the fidgets. And for some kids, when they are having a meltdown, they will bang their heads. You find that they will have bumps. For some, they bite or they pinch. It means that those kids, they require deep pressure. So what you can do as a parent, it is to give them a bear hug. That is a hug from behind. You go behind them and then you give them that deep pressure because that's what they require. Because their cup is half, is not full. So they require that. Or you can buy a vest, a deep pressure vest, or a deep pressure blanket. You can go online and you can find that and you can buy it. I'm sorry, it's there. Weighted blankets, weighted jackets, it's there. And they're talking about the touch because remember, some are sensitive. And also even the furniture arrangement to reduce the bumping, like we said. I'm not sure. Okay, so here, these are signs, this is the support for a tantrum now. Remember, the tantrum has its own strategies because with the tantrum, we said a child might be wanting your attention or wanting a certain object or whatever that they want. So these are some of the strategies that you can use. At times, you can ignore a child, but when you ignore, you just turn your a blind eye, but you redirect them. Maybe you tell another story, or you praise them, or you talk about something that they loved, maybe that happened earlier on, so that they focus on that. They shift from whatever that they are focusing on to the new topic. So it's a redirecting, not just ignoring as such. So you can tell a story or talk about their birthday that is coming and whatever, just to distract. And also you offer choices. Maybe if a child doesn't want to go and run a bath, then you ask them, do you want to play a game now and then run a bath? Give choices, because when you're giving choices, it's not like you are taking away whatever that they are doing, but you are ensuring them that, okay, after the bath, you are going to go back to your game. So you're giving choices that it's okay, let's do this now, and then we do that after. So it's first and then. I don't know if I'm, okay. And then it's autism in women. And most of the time, the research says it's one in 5, one girl in 5 girls that is diagnosed with autism. The reason it's not that because girls are not prone to autism, no. It is because girls are able to mask. So even with the meltdown, girls can be able to go for a long time without having a meltdown. Even if they are in an environment that is overwhelming, but they can be able to be there and not have a meltdown. But maybe when they get to their safe space, when they get home, that is when they can then explode. But during the course of the day, they were like everything was okay, yet it wasn't okay. But with the men or boys, it is 4 in 5. That's how the research, that's what the research says. Okay, and another research says 80% of women, they are misdiagnosed. Instead of autism, they will be diagnosed with eating disorders, borderline personality disorders, bipolar, anxiety, ignoring the other traits that are there, the ASD traits. Okay, let me stop there for today. Thank you. Oops. Okay.
I got it. Thank you so much, Mama Mneli. I think now we'll just have an opportunity for comments or questions.
Thank you very much. That was incredibly helpful, and I've been taking notes, and there are just so many very useful, practical actions that we can do. My question to you is, I've been thinking a lot about routine, and for many of us it is incredibly difficult to have a routine because of work commitments and kind of external factors and way of life. And my question to you is, does ritual, would that be useful? So, for example, if you can't get a child living with autism to bed in their own bed at 7 o'clock every night, would ritual help where the child has, say, a blankie, and wherever they are, so if they're out or at another babysitter or something like that, the child knows 7 o'clock, blankie time. So it's ritual rather than the routine of being in the same bed every night, etc., etc.
Let me say, yes, the routine, but what we always emphasize, it is the routine, although we know exactly that at times it's not going to be possible. For instance, let's say you're on a vacation, it's not going to be possible. But maybe for those days, as long as, the first thing would be, if you are going away, like I said earlier on, you have to alert the child so that they know. Because if they are aware that there's going to be a change, then they're not going to be strictly or rigid, to the schedule, because they know exactly, you did make them aware that we are going to be going away for a vacation. This is where we are going, using the pictures and everything. So I think, that disruption will be less frustrating for the child because you did make them aware. But if you avoid the making aware, notifying them, like I said, going to the calendar and writing a social story, then they start to give you the behavior then, because they're going to start then pacing up and down. And also, what is important is, even when you are away also, it is to ensure that you get a safe space. Allow them. If they don't want to mingle, you can't force them. So let them do as they please, let me say so. Because at times you could be having a family gathering, but if they don't want to be part of the bigger group, you don't have to force them to be. Find a safe space, which could be a bedroom or wherever, where they can just swiftly move in there and just be by themselves. Maybe play their game or whatever.
Thank you so much for that. I must not speak. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. My granddaughter was diagnosed as having Asperger's. So she's on the spectrum, but she's doing very well. But there was a strange thing that we saw with her, particularly, she masks very well. She watches the other children, she watches the behavior she's supposed to have. So if she came in here, you wouldn't actually be able to put your finger on it unless you live with her. Then, like my daughter and my son-in-law, and I'm aware of it because I'm with her a lot of time, she does not like to say goodbye and thank you. She will not. And on the weekend, and she's now 6 years old, and on the weekend I said to her, you need to say to the uncle and auntie, thank you for having me, goodbye. She looked me straight in the face and she said, I won't. And I thought about that when I got home, and I thought, you know what, this child does not like goodbye. I must find another word. Today we used the word cheerio. And I said to her, can you please say cheerio till next time? And she said it beautifully, cheerio till next time. So we've learned something, that perhaps if you just use a different word, for her it makes perfect sense. But she will not say goodbye. She refuses, and she always has refused. She doesn't like what you mentioned earlier on. What did you call it? Transition. Doesn't like it. Doesn't like to go from one thing she's playing to another, from my daughter's house to my house. doesn't like transition at all. She battles with that. But once she's there and settles down, then she's fine. But it's getting her from point A to point B. So it's very challenging for people with these children, and I really feel for them. And thank you for your knowledge. I've so enjoyed it. One quick question. Social story you mentioned. Is that the conversation board? Is that the same thing?
A social story, okay, a communication board. It's a board that will have, if the child is able to write, it can have like a keyboard, sort of the letters, and then the child will be able to write. That's a communication board. A communication board also could be made up of pictures. For instance, to make the life of the child easy, you can come up with all the pictures that the child would need in the kitchen, or maybe for dinner, or maybe the clothing. So you have a page for each and everything. Then you make up, you laminate that, you bind it into some small book, Then you know that if maybe it's clothing, if the child is non-speaking, then you'll just go to clothing and you tell the child, go to your cupboard and take a T-shirt, a pink T-shirt, but pointing to the T-shirt and the techies. Then it makes it easy, because remember we spoke about the instruction whereby we are saying you can't give a long instruction, and also to let them to digest and process whatever that you are saying. But let me thank you again for mentioning that, because I did miss that out. To say no one autistic person is the same as the other. They are unique. So one strategy can work for some, but it might not work for the other. But what is important as a parent, you do trial and error. You know what works for your child, and you stick to that. And as a teacher also, observe what works for him, what works for her, so that you know exactly what is it that you can use for that smooth operation in your class or at home. Thanks.
I've got one. How do the autistic children end up growing up? Do they marry? Do they have children? Just something, about their futures. And jobs as well, that sort of...
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it was in July, in Action in Autism, we had a guy from Cape Town, and he was launching his book. And his book is, what legs? Chicken Legs. That is the title of the book, Chicken Legs. The book is about his journey, from a young boy. And he wasn't even aware. Even his parents were not aware. He was only diagnosed at the age of 40-something, recently. He was recently diagnosed. He was an engineer and everything. And he shared his journey and the way he found it difficult at a workplace, because people were looking at him and making all sort of comments and everything, because they didn't understand that he was on the spectrum. So they do get married. He's married. So they do, especially level 1 and level 2. They can, because remember, level 1, just like the lady said, her granddaughter has had Asperger. So in the past, we used to have like categories under autism, but now they all fall under one spectrum. So Asperger is level 1. They can go as far as universities. They become professors, engineers, and because they are so much clever. They are inventors. You think of Henry Ford. He came up with that first car. He was autistic. So many people that are inventors, they are on the spectrum. So, but some of them, they don't get married. Why? At times, parents, if they have autistic kids, they tend to be overprotective and not want anything for their child. But for some, they've got beautiful families. Yeah.
Thank you, Sis Mnel. As you are sharing all these like tips or some practical things that we as parents need to look at. I'm sharing with my sisters here at the back that I'm seeing some of these signs in my daughter. She's about to turn 18, and you know, when you expose that cycle, that they become anxious, then yeah, and when you explain that girls are able to contain themselves, even if something happens during the day, you know, she'll come back at home and say, "Ma, I had a bad day. Something like 1, 2, 3 happened at school. So can I cry now?" You know, as we are talking, I'm going back. I'm busy looking at her now. I'm like asking myself to say, maybe,
Is she or is she? No, maybe she's not.
you know, why I'm saying this, because I also have a colleague who had an autistic child. But as you are saying that each parent needs to observe the child, and you must know your child. We will meet, the last time I met her, the child is big now, he's 23 years old. The last time I met her, we were at Checkers. And the child was all over the supermarket, and I was like, why are you allowing
Your child to
go
move
all the
around.
aisles? And we were like standing in one place. And it means the mom now knows the child. The child will just go all around the shop and then comes back eventually. So thank you for sharing this. This is very powerful. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
We have a question from those who have joined us online, from Umama Unosi Sambat. Uti, it's training for teachers that I'm concerned about. Are teachers being trained enough on how to work with neurodiverse students?
I'm going to speak on the side of education, because I've been working for education for 13 years, although I left last year. I did a major operation on my spine, so I had to exit. Education does train teachers. I remember last year in January, and this year in January also, I think around 300 educators. Yes, the training is not enough, because remember, the training has to be continuous. But there are small pockets, you know, of achievement that we are seeing from Department of Education. But we, as Action in Autism, we do offer trainings, one in March, and there's another one coming up in September. So Nosisa, go to our Facebook page. I'm sure next week we will have our advert. So we do training. We train teachers how to identify, and it's a 2 days training. It's an intensive from 8 o'clock up to 4 o'clock for 2 days. We also teach them how to develop an individual support plan, so that if ever the educator has identified a child that is exhibiting or presenting with the autism traits, or if the child is on the spectrum, then the teacher will then have to develop an individual plan, so that the teacher knows exactly. They will be learning. But remember, the teachers, they have to do what is called curriculum differentiation. So the teacher will be differentiating for this particular child, but not only the child on the spectrum and the other kids that are there that are struggling with reading, writing, spelling, maths, and behavioral problem. Because the teacher must be able to develop a plan and develop activities that will suit those individual learners in class. So we do offer training. We also offer individual trainings. If a school wants on-site training, we do that. We do a 4-hour training. So the only thing that whoever is interested, they can do, they must just call us. Or they can write an email, info@actioninautism.org, or therapy@actioninautism.org.za. Yes. So you can also send us a WhatsApp on 082-552-6799 or 031-563-3039. You can Google and find our contact. We are there, and we're waiting for that call, and we then jump. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sis Nelly, for such a moving presentation. We've got a small token from our rector and the members of the congregation of this parish, St. Agnes Anglican Parish of Kloof. We just want to say thank you for making time and share with us this valuable information. Nothing will take this from us. You've really empowered us. Thank you.
And thank you, Baba. Magibe iloko. I know from St. Faith's, but I know what Baba doesn't recognize me. You once came to my house. My daughter had a problem with Babu Msimango. I don't know, but I think there are so many. I don't know which is which.
No,
Yes.
we'll ask
But as
her.
long as
She's going to email it, to send it on WhatsApp, the real one. Yes. Yeah. Siyabonga kakhulu sis with the chocolate. Thank you, sis. It's wonderful. Thanks. Siyabonga kakhulu.
Can maybe close in prayer. We just call out to our beloved God of diversity and inclusivity. And we just acknowledge in this space that we are learning more about your beautiful, diverse people. And thank you for Nelly and the work that she does with Action and Autism in ensuring that people living with autism have a voice, a space, have dignity, and can be a true reflection of Christ's all-embracing love. We just thank you for this time this evening. And we just commit ourselves to being open-hearted to those who might feel that they live on the margins, so that they will begin to know the love and grace of God, and that we will understand each other in new ways and in the ways that we can live out our Christian faith. We just ask for travel mercies as we go home, and bless Nelly as she continues this amazing work. And bless those living with autism and those who love and live with people living with autism. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you so much. And to those who have been tuning in, and we are grateful even for their participation. Thank you so much and stay blessed. Thank you.
Hello.
What is your name?
It's Kanyezi.
Tell your granny you love her.
Granny, I love you.
Oh, thank you, my dear.